Thank you, Corey, Rashid. Uh, Thank you, my brother Rodney. So everything looks good, so I'm gonna proceed. Um, you know what I like to do, man. Before I begin, I got to give a shout out to all of the members of the Green Gorilla channel. So let me start that process, and then we're gonna move on to the next phase. And I'm sorry about the technical difficulties or whatever the case may be. It's like that sometimes. So anyway, man, I want to give a shout out to Black Dog, Odd Collar, The Face, Craig, Raphael Brown, Omni Americana, Deanne, Donald Watts, Barry Little, Ryan Jackson, hiphop.catv, Black Wizard 80OS, Coach DC, The Remedy, Kashif Caldwell, Infamous Chillin', I Am Black Man, John Rees Too Much, Nitchita, True King 337, B Hillfire, Force Windu, Mr. Blue Collar, Urban Nomad, Barnolas, Kyle J. Sura, I'm Just Jules, The Book of Ronin, Ab Media 83, Damon Harris, Brian McMurray, Mr. Lou Meth, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Shop Talk Live, Mr. Heat, Afro Analyst, NEU, Ronan Martin, Issa Abdul Sahir, Sir Anthony, Deshaun Nolly, MLR, Charles Rogers, Universal 178, Black Swerve 404, Rashid Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, C Truth the Revelator, Gold Professor, The Nameless Protagonist, Black Pill Ned Stark, Arthur Unknown, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Brian Williams, Kalan Jakala, Sherrod Martin, Ricky Dawson, Cedric Bowman, True 7360, BK Born Shaheed, James Washington, Hostile Adept, Seven Coast Dojo, W. Pierre 1, Rogish the Billmonger, I Care, BGS Ibmore, Marvin Battle Jr., S. Haywood, Dragon 59, Supreme Ibmore, Adrian Hicks, Jay Bailey, Mr. Michi, Any You Again, Momal, William Ruffin, and Asangwa. I want to give a shout out to each and every one of y'all and give you a round of applause for supporting the Green Gorilla channel. I really appreciate that. I truly do. Thank you for helping me develop the channel to the point where it is. And perhaps maybe it can move even further. I'm working on it, man. There's some mishaps and some faux pas along the way, but we still do what we do. We still get it in. So anyway, thank you for your ongoing support and for your help for me establishing the channel and to keep it going. I appreciate that. Now, let me just say this. Today I'm going to do this show and look, I'm not in total agreement with anybody on any issues whatsoever. But I think it's instructive to go over this person that I'm going to go over. Her name is Camille Paglia. And, I already see some comments where she's bougie. She this, she that. But the title of the show is Women I Could Work With. It ain't women I'm in complete 100% agreement with. It means that I can work with her. I can work with the mindset that she has. I can work with the ideals that, to some extent, she presents. Now, will I be 100% in agreement with her? No. Or anybody for that matter. In fact, let me tell you a story, man. So, have you ever sat down on the toilet and tried to take a shit, but you couldn't? Huh? Or worse, have you ever farted and accidentally shit on yourself? Have you ever done it? Well, if you can't trust your own ass, who can you trust? If you're not in agreement with what your body says part of the time, how could you be in full and total agreement with what somebody else is saying or thinking 100% of the time? Huh? It is what it is. It is what it is. But anyway, man, this Camille Paglia woman, man, she is a feminist academic and a social critic. And she has been a professor at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, since 1984. She's been at this for a minute, okay? And she's critical of a whole bunch of aspects of contemporary culture and of modernity as well. She's the author of a book called Sexual Persona. And the subtitle of that text, Sexual Personae, is Art and Decadence from Nefertiti to Emily Dickinson. Now, as I said, she is also a critic of contemporary American feminism and of a philosophical view called post-structuralism. And she is also a commentator on a whole bunch of different aspects of American culture as it pertains to art, music, and film history. So that's what she does. She is a professional critic. So we're going to explore her thought and some of her ideas when we come back. And so I'm going to take a quick little pause for the cause. And when I get back, we're going to do that. So I'll be right back. Okay, we back. You know who I am. And you know what I came here to do, man. I came here to move the crowd, man. So shout out to all the people out there in the chat. Shout out Art and Awesome. Rude Dog. Shout out to Damon Hurst, Jones Boy, Corey Shaw, Rashid Barnes, Rodney Coleman, KOS, Michael Ross. Shout out. And then shout out to the brother who just hit me up on the Cash App. Thank you, brother. I appreciate all that support, man. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you, Michael Pitts. I appreciate it. But at any rate, man, we're going to get into what we came to do. And any support will be greatly appreciated. So, without further ado, man, let's just get right into it. I'm going to show you video clips of this woman's thought. And I'll pause along the way. And hopefully we can determine whether or not we can work with her. So let's do that, man. Let's get to it, man. Right off the bat. Let's go.
You said that feminism, a lot of it is trying to emasculate men. What about that?
Well, I come out of an Italian culture where we have very strong women and very strong and glamorous men. I never knew any weak men in my entire tradition. And there's absolutely no comparison between the kinds of masculine charisma, let's say, of my uncles and cousins or my father and so on, and these kind of wimpy men dragging themselves around today in the white middle class, all of whom are trying to obey feminist dicta. What I'm
Let me stop it right there. See, this is why I say I can fuck with Camille Paglia, man. Straight up, man. Now, look, I'm not going to be 100% in agreement with what she says. I'm not in 100% agreement with what anyone says. But I can fuck with that. I can work with that. I mean, ultimately, men in this culture are being called to obey the dicta of feminist thought. That's a fact. And she basically says, you got a whole bunch of wimpy men like little puppies and shit, bowing down to whatever these women say. And, you know, all I can say is I agree with that. All I can do is give her a round of applause for that. I can get with that. I agree with that. Now, let's proceed further and see what else she has to say.
Saying is that when a man tries to obey the feminist agenda, he cuts himself down to become a son to a mother goddess, and that is not in the best interest of women. It's in women's best interest to want very virile and therefore, by definition, rather troublesome men.
There she goes, dropping another bomb. I told people here a while ago, I said it, my mother's dead. I don't have any mothers out here. There's no mother roles for me anymore. After a certain period of time, the older you get, your mother is no longer an authority figure for you. You're grown. And these women want to son us. I have no interest in being any woman's out here son. None. Zero. Not one. If you're going to deal with me, you're going to deal with me as a full-fledged man. If not, get the fuck on down the road. You feel me? But let's go. Let's keep it pushing.
Well, I'm in great favor of wet T-shirt contests. I love Hooters. I support.
Me too. I like Hooters, and I like wet T-shirt contests too. I give her a ding for that. Now, just to let you know, she is a lesbian. Okay, she's a lesbian, but I don't care. You can be whatever you want to. You know, what you eat don't make me shit. Do whatever you want to do. It's your thing. You can sock it to who you want to. Okay? I never had a problem. The only problem I have is when these people start to talk to me as if I'm an oppressor. That I have a problem with. But, you know, hey, I like wet T-shirt contests too. And I like Hooters too. Let's proceed.
Hooters. I have a T-shirt from Hooters. I love the whole history of sexual exhibitionism going all the way back to ancient Babylon. I think it's in our genes. I think that it's natural for the sexes to want to display to each other in erotic terms.
And look, you already know what cuffing and mating season is. Women and men are going to be exhibitionists as it pertains to sex. Now, the question is, how far do you want to go with it? Now, you know, you can do so in good taste. It just seems like today we've gone overboard with the exhibitionism. Like there's a time and a place for everything. You know, you can twerk at the club, but you ain't got to twerk at the kitchen. You can twerk at the club, but you ain't got to show your vaginals to the police during a protest. It ain't the time and the place for that. You get what I'm saying? Now, what's revolutionary in one place is tasteless in another. But I will say this. During wartime, I bet you won't be twerking in front of the opposing force now, will you? Because you show them your vag, well, they're going to make sure it's seen anyway in ways you don't like. But you don't want to have that conversation, though. But anyway, let's proceed.
Yeah, but is that the only thing that, I mean, an awful lot of girls are taught that's the only thing to do, and they think that is their only weapon. They haven't learned anything else.
I'm not so sure anymore that's our problem. I think it's the opposite. In the white middle class, we have girls going along who are being told, you are going to be future leaders. You must be a lawyer or a senator or a doctor or an astronaut. And I think at least 50% of the women in the Ivy League schools have no desire, in point of fact, to be there. And 50 years ago, they would just have gotten married. And this is my explanation for the epidemic of anorexia and bulimia.
Man, look, this show was recorded in the 90s, the early 90s. It was recorded in the early 90s, okay? Just so you know. And today, the same thing that white women were encouraged to do long ago is the same thing that black women are being encouraged to do now. These are the facts. You got to be a leader. You got to be a lawyer. You got to be a doctor. I guarantee you, half of these women don't want to be there to begin with. Half of these women want what they asked Kevin Samuels for on his show. I want a man who's in corporate America making money. Am I wrong or am I right? And a lot of these women are being basically encultured. They're being pushed to this end. But in the end, they still want a man to take care of every damn thing anyway. That's the problem and that's the disconnect. But let's proceed. Let's push. Like Rick Ross say, push.
The whole point of the 60s was to question the Western career system and to say that we are much more than our social selves. And right now, in the Ivy League, there's only one way to be. If a girl in the Ivy League at the sophomore level were to say, I'm going to drop out, get pregnant, and live with my boyfriend in the commune, the way people in my generation did, such girls would be treated as traitors to their class.
There you go. So right now, if a woman drops out, gets married, and says, fuck school, I'm getting married, I'm going to be with my husband, they're going to be perceived as traitors. Can you imagine that? You get perceived as a traitor. That's crazy. But this is the culture that we live in. And I said it a long time ago. If you want to know what black women now are doing, especially intersectional feminists, all you have to do is study second and third wave. Well, third wave feminism is intersectional feminism. But all you got to do is study the most radical, the most neurotic, the most outrageous feminists from that era. And you'll find it right now, right here in black culture. But at the same time, that they're copycatting, mimicking, Xeroxing the talking points of these outrageous, neurotic, and outlandish second wave feminists, they have the audacity to call us the white people of black people. Give me a motherfucking break. But let us keep pushing.
Wasting their expensive education and so on. No, I think we're having the opposite problem right now, an overdevelopment of the Apollonian side of young women's selves.
Now, let me stop here. So I know my avatar is covering up part of the screen, but what she's making a reference to here is that women are being taught on a whole-scale fashion in this culture to adopt the characteristics and the principles and the orientation towards being of the god Apollo versus that of the god Dionysus. Now this split, this bifurcation between and comparing and contrasting of Apollo with Dionysus is something that the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche did in his writing, okay? Now, one could argue he's the father of postmodernity. Whatever the case may be, it's really unimportant. What are the qualities of the god Apollo? Reason. Detached reason. Okay? Clarity, beauty, artistry, but not of a passionate kind, but of a technical and a distanced and a cerebral kind. Self-control, right? Perfection related to thinking, right? So women have been now urged, pushed to adopt and to embrace these qualities in opposition to that of the god Dionysus, whose central or key characteristics have to do with emotionality, intuitiveness, disorder, chaos, as opposed to order and structure, or whatever the case may be. So, whereas Apollo is about the word and math and science, Dionysus is about music, art, and festivals. Okay? And something that she said that was really key before I stopped this clip. In the 60s, the young people were pushing back against the bureaucratic, neoliberal, bourgeois establishment. Today, people are fighting to get into that. They're making that the paramount aim. So, no, we're not like our forefathers or our ancestors. We're not. Because whereas they were looking for a break from the bourgeois, neoliberal, corporate, or bureaucratic environment, we are arguing that not enough of us have access to it. That's the disconnect. But anyway, I digress. Let's push forward.
Throughout history, that's what happens. You have an excess, which generates a reaction that goes too far and becomes excessive, and now we're moving in the opposite direction again. I'm afraid most of the country and the world probably is moving back toward the right.
Why?
I believe it's because modernism has failed. That is, modernism has...
What was modernism?
The 20th century, there have been a number of major revolutions of thought in the last few hundred years. The Enlightenment, for example, opposed organized religion, but put science and reason in its place. Then Romanticism also opposed organized religion, but it put poetry and art in its place. Now in the 20th century, all right, you have modernism knocking everything down, all ideals, religious, patriotic,
Family.
everything, family, everything is gone. And so I, as a teacher now of almost 25 years, say that the children have nothing. The young have nothing. These are the latchkey kids.
So ultimately, let me stop here and kind of resketch what it is that she's saying. Okay, so ultimately what she's saying is, look, during the time of the Enlightenment, there was a replacement of ecclesiastical authority, the church, and dismissal of the divine right of kings, autocracy, monarchy, right? And it was replaced with rationalism and science. That's what it was replaced with. Now, there were alternatives, right, to replace ecclesiastical authority and the divine right of kings. And it came from people called humanists and romanticists. All right. But in this culture, the option, the selection has been science and rationalism. Technocracy is what it's called. Okay. So this is where we find ourselves. And this may be the problem that we're experiencing in our culture. That's why there's so much enemy rampant everywhere. We don't know how to fucking relax. It's all about work, work, work. Get money, money, money. Be efficient, efficient, efficient. Sometimes you got to take stock of your reality, man. Like, why is there so much pressure in the culture in which we live? It's all artificial. But I digress. But the kids are being taught this shit. That's another problem. So when you go to school, the kids are not taught the great traditions of the world. They're not taught ancient history in a holistic and a substantive way. What we do now is we teach secular humanism. These kids don't know about the great Hebraic traditions, the great Abrahamic traditions, even related to Islam. They don't know anything about ancient culture at all. They don't even know their own culture. The only thing we have now is secular culture. And one could argue they don't even know the great civilizations that have existed through antiquity. They don't know about the Nile Valley. They don't know about the Tigris Euphrates. They don't know about the contributions of Asia. They don't know about the contributions of Africa. They know nothing. All they know is the fucking Kardashians, Jersey Shore, Snooki and shit like that. That's all they know. So there's a disconnect. And these kids, they don't even have nurturing from family life anymore. These kids are, as this woman just said, they're latchkey kids. They go off to school to get trained by primarily white women because those are the primary educators in America. Every day. And when they come home, the parents typically are too tired to deal with them in a holistic and in a fully immersive way. But this is the culture that we live in. Let me keep pushing.
Generation X, right?
Orphans, I call them.
Yes, they're orphans. We have a whole generation of young people that lack the exuberance and the gusto that you and I have as part of our generation. We have a kind of brio that they, a kind of joie de vivre that they lack.
You once said, you have a famous statement, infamous statement possibly, that says there are no female Mozarts because there are no female Jack the Rippers.
Right. I feel that both genius and criminality of the Jack the Ripper kind are deviations off the ends of the spectrum. Women seem to chart in the great middle of the IQ continuum. And we know IQ is a very fluid concept, but I feel that that the reason there haven't been no major female artists in the visual arts in history is not simply due to women's lack of access to training. That is certainly true for some genres like sculpture, where women were not could not work as apprentices and had no access to expensive materials like bronze and so on. But let's take the example of musical composition or philosophy or mathematics. Women had access to pen and paper for hundreds of years now. An example of music, well-bred women of the middle and upper classes have had access to piano instruction. It was expected of women since the 1790s. It's now 200 years later. I speak as a professor of the history of the arts. It has to be remembered. In fact, even a composition teacher, a professional composer in my own university took me aside a number of years ago and said, why is it that my best women composing students drop out and just go off and get married, and far less talented men continue? And the reason is, I think, that women are not comfortable in an abstract world without emotion or psychology, that men, in fact, flee to computers or to math.
So ultimately what she's saying here is, for the most part, women, in terms of IQ and accomplishment and achievement, they typically are in the middle of the curve. They're at neither extreme most abundantly. But when you find men, you get men who are like at the extremes. Men can be extremely violent, extremely neurotic, but they can be geniuses also. Men are compelled, obsessed, some men, with success. And a lot of men are drawn into, the characteristics associated with Apollo. But women, for the most part, are not. But they're being forced, being pushed by a cadre of women who want them to be able to compete with men. And these women, one has to ask the question, do they even want to do this? Why is there such a necessity for women to do exactly what men are doing? What's the cause? What's the reason? We'll get more into that as we proceed.
You said something once wonderful to me. You said you understand male rapists, that women lead you on, and they have no idea what they're doing because we've been trained to relate sexually. Sometimes I know models, that's the only way they relate and actresses to anyone, male or female. They relate completely sexually. They'll come up, and if they like you, they'll come up, throw themselves and wiggle all over you. And, you know, that must be rough on an awful lot of guys. What do you mean, the eyes of a male rapist?
Well, I think that it's not just trained. Women, certain women are trained to behave in an excessively erotic manner.
What do you feel?
I believe that women really don't know what they want. This is what I feel as someone whose dating life as a lesbian was a disaster. From you know, I have struck out. You know, I have practically like 100% strikeout rate. You know, with as a person who's trying to date other women. So I have the same frustrations that men have with women. The way women can't make up their mind. That women aren't even aware when they're aroused. Whereas again, just what you said about the externality of male genitals, men suddenly discover that they have they have a bulge in their pants. Oh, this is surprising because I'm sitting with another man. Sort of like, but women.
Wait. Hey, man.
Bruh.
No, sis, but I get the point you're making. Let's proceed. In other words, women don't know when they're aroused sometimes. They don't know what they want. They don't have resolve. They're not resolute in the way that most men are. Men know what they want and can define what it is that they want. Women dither and oscillate sometimes. And everybody that's had a woman knows what this is. They know what do you want this? No, I don't know if I want this, if I want to do that. Look, what do you want to do, man? Are you serious or you're not serious? You want to go this way or you don't want to go that way? What do you want to do? So this is what she's talking about, right? Let me keep pushing.
Women's inner life is very misty. It's very misty and cloudy. I think that women are a mystery to themselves. So I understand many men's rage toward women because it's impossible to pin women down. Women are baffling. They're goddesses. One is in love with them, but they are absolutely frustrating to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
I think she's right there, but...
You said that you have to understand football to understand men in the workplace. What's that mean?
I believe that American football is the center of a lot of our thinking in politics or in just on the general cultural agenda. And I have learned an enormous amount about life from football. I call football my only real religion. It teaches you strategies of offense and defense. Right? It tells you how to pick yourself up after a heavy hit. It tells you how to pursue. It tells you how to strategize on the long term. You know, if you're defeated in the Super Bowl, you have to wait an entire year to get back again. So I have a very long view. It could be Italian also. Okay, Italians, we invented the vendetta. Okay, and so on. So I love planning, and I love all of the techniques of subterfuge. And O.J. Simpson, for example, and the juking and the jiving style that he had running down the field, even influenced certain things that I do. I love, if I were to be a football player, I would be either I would be a tight end, that is one of the ones a big guy who gets the ball over his shoulder and knocks people down on the way to the goal line. Or I would be a free safety. I view myself as the free safety, actually, of academe or of the culture. And you're someone who roams the field, and you appear out of nowhere and just knock people down. You see?
Sounds good. Sounds like you.
It's me.
Now, let me just say this, man. You know, sports for men is the sublimation of violence in the real world. It's a substitute for what could happen. Men are going to compete over something. They're going to do that, okay? So here, what you have is a sublimation of the competitive spirit of men in the context of a game. And, you know, she's just expressing her, you know, approval of the game, her, you know, fan status related to the game. Now, as far as, or insofar as she actually is, you know, like a player on the field, I can't speak to that, but, you know, that's why we do sport. So there is something called the philosophy of sport in the field of philosophy. So I just wanted to kind of give you some insight on that. I thought it would be. So anyway, let's proceed further. Holding women accountable.
The first time we talked was maybe 5 years ago after your first book came out. We talked a lot about sexual harassment, date rape, and women setting themselves up for it by having 10 tequilas and going to some guy's dorm room and then screaming when she got raped. And the fact that my generation, the 50s, we all knew that men were very dangerous animals, and you just don't go near them when you've had a whole bunch to drink unless that's what you want. A lot's changed since then.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be so much a problem. And I think a lot of it had to do with you.
Oh, there's no doubt that when I came on the scene, and began writing about the date rape hysteria, this would have been early 1991. I was abused from coast to coast.
Oh, yeah.
I had to have security guards when I went on campus. Yeah, but I've made an enormous change. There's no doubt about it. The entire date rape, sexual harassment discourse has really quieted down and is much more open to different points of view today.
And you think that's because girls, once again, are getting protected of themselves and understanding that the male animal is a dangerous force?
Well, I think people are following my philosophy, which is that every woman should take personal responsibility for her own behavior in her own life, that is the way to full female freedom. We don't want to go backwards to a protectionist regime again, where you have to run to big daddy figures to get you out of a jam.
How do you think that WASP culture has influenced this country's consciousness or has formed it?
If you plan to go along the track to become an Ivy League professor, you better conform. And even the blacks who have been hired by the Ivy League have all been subordinated to this style, and it is atrocious. Okay, that WASP style is a gigantic mechanism that has never stopped grinding. Even today in the corporate world, people are still, every ethnic eventually loses his or her ethnicity if you're in the corporate world in America long enough. What I'm saying is that the Industrial Revolution was born in England, and that Northern European Protestant style, rather passionless and bland, is in fact the best way to get along in the office for office work. And so that's what I'm saying, that this huge mechanism of the industrial world, right, that is what's permanent about WASP style. So I'm calling for what I call creative duality. So you could be one thing at the office, but then you must recover your vitality and flamboyance, your ethnic roots in your at-home self.
Yes.
Because I think that there's no way, I thought I could be an Italian all the way through academia and so on, and that's how I got fired from Bennington College, okay? Because institutions cannot tolerate, in point of fact, too much flamboyant theatricality of the kind that I was absolutely lavish with in my first job in the 1970s at Bennington.
What do you think about affirmative action?
I think affirmative action was very noble in its original ideal, but that the way it has been practiced has been utterly corrupt, and the entire system needs a radical revamping. I think that most progressive people would agree that that African Americans deserve some special dispensation in view of what they have suffered in history. But in
My bad, man. My mic was muted. God damn, man. So anyway, man, I apologize for that. But look, here's the reality of the situation, man. We already know in relation to affirmative action that these people, man, have basically thrust themselves into a situation in which they've taken over that which was supposed to be earmarked for the people who were most repressed and oppressed in this country. We know this, man. We know this. But instead of being honest and open, they've taken it for themselves. And it's primarily white women who are the benefactors of affirmative action. And I apologize for there being no sound a little bit earlier. But hey, let's keep it pushing. Sorry for the technical difficulty. This shit happens from time to time. I'm still figuring it out.
in fact, it's white middle-class women who have benefited most from affirmative action. It's the affirmative action, let's say, as practiced in the major universities at the level of faculty recruitment. In the Ivy League, from Harvard to Princeton, all the elite schools, in Chicago, Berkeley, Duke, and so on, you have mediocre women, fifth-rate women, who have been left over, far more deserving white men for positions, right? And it is women, due to affirmative action, who have destroyed the standards for scholarship in the humanities programs in America. And
damn! Hey, look, I'm sorry for the sound, man. But hey, is she lying? Is she lying? Where she lied at? Because I don't even have to comment on this shit, and you can understand where I'm coming from by showing it to you in the first place. And this is in the 90s. This is the early 90s. These conversations are not new. These conversations have been going on, but certain people get cut off. They can't cut her off, though. She can't be cut off. Now they did try to, intimidate and bully her early on in her career, but she was like, fuck that. I'm not allowing y'all to do that to me. I'm not going to allow for that. And so she keeps pushing. Special shout out to the brother who sent me the cash app to let me know I was fucking up and didn't have the mic going. But appreciate all your help, man. Appreciate that. Rashid Barnes, thank you, dog. Appreciate that. But they're the primary benefactors. And man, just watch, man. Just keep watching, man. Keep watching this. Keep watching.
Affirmative action, should be put out of its misery.
How do they do that? They just yank it up, and then what happens to all the people that really, really deserve it and really need it?
What affirmative action should have been about originally was making some special effort for those who are truly deprived, truly, provably, demonstrably deprived. Instead, what happened was that you had Hispanics suddenly declared a privileged class. Well, why am I not declared a privileged a minority class in virtue of being Italian American? My mother was born in Italy. Yet you have someone from a well-off, and I know of cases, outrageous cases, of people from a rich upper middle class family who have one Hispanic grandparent, right? They would get scholarship money that should have been going to deserving, even poor whites.
Yeah.
It's been milked, okay, by embezzlers and extortionists.
That's why some people don't believe in our government.
Exactly. This is a tragedy. So basically what they've done is they co-opted a program that was designed to actually be reparations for black people. And while they're doing that, they have created systems that bash black men. And black women are deep down all up into this. And you got to ask the question, what the fuck are y'all doing? Listening to these neurotic people, man. What's wrong with y'all, man? What are y'all thinking? You don't see the plan? Y'all supposed to be the most educated. You gotta, either it's all about money and self-interest and carving out a niche for yourself. But don't, if that's what it is, just say that's what it is. Don't say you're trying to lead the black community. Just say you only want something for yourself. Say that shit. Don't say you're actually out here working in behalf of the black community, trying to push the justice and freedom forward for all people. Don't say that, man. Not following these people's talking points. I'm talking about the neurotic, the outlandish, and the outrageous second wavers. Because they got a problem, man. And it's one thing to want equal opportunity. It's another thing, to basically push people out of the way who have gone through way more than what you have gone through as a demographic. And to just push them out. And then create, in a clever and a slick way, a way to stigmatize those very people who've been subjected to the most heinous conditions in this country. It's disgraceful, is what the fuck it is. But back to the regularly scheduled program.
How would you revamp the system?
Well, I think it has to be looked at very closely. I think that affirmative action should be class-based and not racially based.
And class is economic class.
Economic deprivation, proven economic deprivation.
Yeah, that's what I think. Do you think that there's becoming a wider and wider class difference in America?
I think that it is now that there's a expanding black middle class and Hispanic middle class and so on. I do feel that there's a serious problem having to do with inner cities versus suburbs. I think that's where you have the problem.
There you go. But see, some men in the manosphere don't want to hear this shit, though. But the reality is, these inner cities are a problem. Most black people would probably qualify for affirmative action, but there are a group of people, they don't even fucking need that help, man. They just don't need the help. Because they have the networks and they have the cultural capital to where they can actually fit in. It's the people from these deprived communities who are in need of the most help. These are just the facts, man. The people who are doing worse off need to be put in a position to where they are not the worst off anymore. That's what real help and justice actually consists in. Not fulfilling quotas and giving slots to people who don't even need the shit. But people know how to freak systems, man. That's just what people do. They know how to work and twerk the system. For how long are we gonna sit back and twerk and work the system and allow people who we know have the cultural cachet to already get in, but to let them take advantage of situations or policies that are supposed to benefit the downtrodden? Why? But oh well.
The manufacturing base of the American economy fell away. Our manufacturing jobs have gone overseas, and as a consequence, education now, as usual, for me, is the key. We have all the power in society going to those who can manipulate the computer, who can be part of the white-collar service sector, which has expanded enormously since World War II.
What happens to people who don't?
This is the problem. I think the inner cities are falling into a very dangerous situation. I want far more attention to the condition of the inner cities.
But they build prisons instead.
Yes, I feel that we need to put the money.
Come on, we talking about poor black folks. We already know what the fuck is going on here. Let's just keep it a buck here. Okay, we're talking about poor black folks. The true ADOS people who are suffering, caught in this trap in this country, and whose situation has never been attended to. And then you all of a sudden got, like Bill Burr said, these Gucci-booted white women, they come along and all of a sudden, well, I've been pressed for thousands of years. Come on, man, cut the malarkey out. Let's keep pushing.
Rather than prisons, into building up the quality of inner city education. It is scandalous. The immigrant generations in the inner cities had a wonderful standard American education, and I am the result of it. I mean, we immigrants profited from that. We had access to American society, but there is a kind of condescending paternalism coming out of the liberal elite in this country that says, oh, those poor people, they can't possibly really master the skills of basic English and the skills, basic mathematics and reading and so on. So we'll just keep on. We don't want to hold their socialization back. So we'll keep passing them from grade to grade. We wouldn't dream of flunking them.
Yeah. Now they do that all over the country now.
And that is a problem. Social promotion is a problem. Those kids can learn, but the environment in which they're supposed to learn is dismal. It's even gotten worse now since COVID, because you got these kids sitting at home in front of computer terminals. And we already know how this impacts black boys, particularly. They're at a real disadvantage. So if we don't hurry up and do something to remedy this situation, the situation is going to get worse. That's just real talk. Now, these are the facts, empirical facts. Society has become more and more bourgeois and white collar. We have a service-based economy. You can't get your hands dirty and go to work anymore. I mean, there are some jobs like that, but they've shrunk. The manufacturing base in this country has shrunk. Can't just go out of high school and get a paying job where you can support a family anymore. You need education to get these jobs. You need technical skills and computer-based skills, coding skills to perform at these jobs. But we can't even read. We're functionally illiterate.
Free thought and free speech are absolutely the essence of democracies. Okay, they're the essence of education, and the inability of universities to enforce free speech on their campuses, their unwillingness to do so, I think it's a major scandal, absolutely major scandal. And
man, look, let me just say this: this whole free speech thing, like, we're speaking freely, but you got to think about it, man. In this country, it's the reason why a lot of black men in this space, man, have avatars instead of speaking with their faces on social media. Because this kind of shit, this kind of conversation can get you fired and terminated from your job. Just speaking the truth about issues or speaking the way you feel about issues. There is a culture of indoctrination taking place in the academy and the Fortune 500 companies in this country. These are facts. But it's a foul thing for that kind of attitude to have been adopted in the context of the academy, because that's where free speech and free thought is supposed to exist more so than any place in this country. But it's all changed. It's all shifted. And it's happened within the context of the past 40 and 50 years. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation and show, at least this is a woman I can work with. Every Wednesday, I'm going to talk about a woman I can work with. Someone who's actually coming from a perspective that I find reasonable, as opposed to, the dicta being laid out, the doctrine being laid out by these programs where these women just tell us to bow down, follow our rules, or else. This is not how we should be living our lives. But these are the strange conditions that we find ourselves in. Let me keep pushing.
I think exposes the gross corruption of the administrative class, which now runs things. I don't know if you realize that universities are no longer that. The faculty have no power. Okay, all power has been stripped away from them by these overpaid and very self-assured bureaucrats who they really are the primary engines of a lot of this political correctness on campus.
I can tell you that that's exactly the case. The faculty at one time used to be the sole persons or the sole group of persons who governed the activities on campuses. They handled everything from administrative duties all the way down to teaching and mentoring students. Nowadays, you have a special class of bureaucrats and administrators who don't teach in the classroom, maybe never ever taught in the classroom, who come and they govern like a technocracy what takes place in the context of the university. This is your technocracy in higher education. It's not a good thing. I'm telling you right now, it's terrible. But these are the conditions that people who go into academia find themselves in. And there's a certain group of people there who love it. They thrive and they revel in it. I'm not one of them individuals.
But I find particularly appalling the failure of so many professors nationwide in the U.S. to be able to understand that when they're in front of a class, okay, that the class is not there as a laboratory, for their particular personal political ideology. I think it's perfectly justified if a professor says what his or her viewpoints are. But they must be presented, okay, as opinion, okay, and the teacher must say simultaneously, all of you, okay, are completely free to take any position you want on any issue, even if it's totally opposite to mine, okay.
I always have done this. I don't care if you're a conservative. I don't care if you're a racist. I don't care what you are. You could be a lesbian, transgender, feminist. I don't care. Whatever it is you are, bring your view to the table. Let's have a conversation. This is a contest of ideas. This is the incubator for ideas. This is where we're supposed to express whatever it is we want to express. Right here, right now. This is a microcosm of what is supposed to take place in our democracy. But instead of having open and candid conversations, right now you have conversations that are only being directed towards one end. And there's political correctness and policing going on. It's like the thought police in the university now. They're pushing people away, threatening people's lives, shouting people down at lectures. This is what's going on in the context of the university now. But, hey, you got to get through it in order to get a good paying job. That's what they're selling us. So you got to come here and be indoctrinated and obey. See, this is why the 60s was different than this era. You can say what the 60s was for all its demerits, but at least they were rebellious across the board. We got a whole bunch of sheepish people right now. And this is just the facts. Let me keep pushing, because I don't want to be here all night.
And the failure to do that, the professors actually think, that they have the right to dictate, to militate, to tyrannize, to bully. And so it's shocking to me how these people got into the profession. And it has to do with the general collapse of any idea, any scholarly standards, whatever, okay, in the most, in the, sort of the high neon fields. It really started with women's studies. Okay, I'm saying this as a feminist, someone who was writing about gender before second wave feminism. I was writing about it in college. I was writing about it. My dissertation, Sexual Personae, was, hard to believe now, was the only dissertation on sex at the Yale Graduate School when I was there. Then after that, within a few short years, everyone was writing about sex, of course. But women's studies was created. I've been trying to get people to see this for decades, and perhaps now maybe their eyes are starting to open about it. Women's studies was just created with a snap of the fingers, okay, by administrators who wanted to make reparation, visible reparation, for the exclusion of women from so many faculties, the few number of women that were on the elite school campuses at that time. The undergraduate colleges of Yale and Princeton went co-ed, okay, at that period when I was in graduate school. And women's studies it began as essentially window dressing in order to telegraph that this college is enlightened, okay, so don't just throw a lot of money at some women, okay, and let them find their way to create women's studies. Now
that's exactly what happened. There were a group of white women, because let me tell you how the African American studies departments were formed. They were formed by students, black students, during the Black Power movement, who basically occupied buildings and demanded that the faculty give them the capacity to study their own history and to have a space in the academy where they could explore issues related to their own experiences within the United States. So it was students who did that. Okay? That wasn't the same thing that happened in this case. Okay? It's a whole different way that this ran down with these women in gender studies departments. This is just the facts. All right? So let's keep pushing.
In a sense, this is we're talking here about the creation, instantaneous creation of a major scholarly field. It required some thinking through in terms of what would be the training of majors in this field. What do they need to know in terms of anthropology, social history, and biology? Okay, how is it possible that that gender studies, as it's now called, has been permitted, okay, to spread, to flourish, without any reference to biology? There's no requirement whatever, okay, for undergraduates to have even a single semester of biology. Now you can end up deciding biology is irrelevant, but not to expose students to it. Instead, to create an instant canon of new books, okay, by contemporary women's studies professors who, in the beginning, many of them came from English departments. They didn't even come from any exposure to social history, and
that's a problem. You got a whole bunch of women who got English degrees, and they started to form women in gender studies departments. They didn't have any tethering to any hard sciences whatsoever. They just started making shit up out of their asses. And here we find ourselves today having to contend with a whole bunch of issues predicated upon, for the most part, ideology. Just some cook up. Straight cook up. All because you had a group of men who decided, okay, well, let's just give these women some money. Let's keep them quiet. Let's shut them up and give them some bread. Let them have a little space on the campus. Fuck it. But they still really don't pay these women attention. But they're starting to understand they created a beast, man. And these women have a responsibility, man. If you're a scholar, you have to allow yourself to be challenged in the public sphere. But right now, if you challenge them, the first thing you get reduced to is a misogynist. That's not a serious discipline, man. Imagine that you challenge a chemist related to a specific idea that he has or a paper that he's published, and you criticize his research, and then the person that criticizes him basically gets called, you're an anti-chemist. You don't like chemistry because you're challenging an idea. That's the same kind of shit that's going on right now in the academy. And it's a problem. It's intellectually dishonest.
The end result was predictable, because now we have a completely impervious, almost like the Politburo, okay, and campus after campus, okay, and the excesses of gender studies, okay, have like spilled over into real life and are affecting, and so now we get, in Hungary, there's.
And that's the true facts. All of this shit that's taking place in the academy has begun to spill over into the real world. I've been trying to tell you guys, the belly of the beast is in the academy. But a lot of you motherfuckers don't want to listen. You act like this shit is YouTube. I've been trying to tell you where the belly of the beast is, but you don't want to hear it. You think it exists within the minds of individual women, and so you have these interpersonal conversations with these individual women trying to reshape their thinking. Well, how are you going to stop a fucking policy? How are you going to stop departments? How are you going to stop the transmission of information in a formal setting? How are you going to contend with that? How? And I'm talking about in damn near every college and university in America, there is a department such as this. And they're smug, they're dismissive, and you cannot challenge them, or else you'll be charged with misogyny.
You're getting efforts on the far right to ban gender studies completely from the universities because it's an ideology, and not a scholarly discipline. I thought, what? And this is a principle that I have observed. It's in the book, in terms of my writing for Salon and so on, which is that when problems on the left are not dealt with, okay, are not honestly and courageously dealt with, those problems go underground and gain in force and will eventually erupt on the right.
She said a whole bunch right there. When the people who are supposed to be progressive do not have an open and honest and earnest conversation about the problems contained within their ideas and their practices and their forms of knowledge, then guess what happens? And then they dismiss an open and a candid conversation about the issues. Guess what ends up happening? It ends up being pushed underground. One could argue the manosphere is a place that's underground, but it could be any type of leftist idea. That's why I read for you that, the stuff that was happening in Harper's Magazine, where, you had a group of scholars come out and they said, look, man, what's happening on the left, we're becoming intolerant. We're not open anymore. Like, I thought we were supposed to be the group of people who were the most open and the most orientated towards justice. No, this shit has become dogma. It's like a religion. And if you don't agree with the doctrine, then you get excommunicated. You get martyrized. You turn into a martyr. That's problematic, man. And they use shame and guilting. They're not using crosses, but they may as well put you on a crucifix. Because they try to, if they don't create death for you, they attempt to create social death for you. And one could argue it's worse to relegate someone to a social death than it is a literal death. because at least with a death, it's over with. When you create social death for a group of people, you cut off their ability to exist within the context of a community. But these are the kind of practices that are being practiced within the context of the left. And this is why you see men, black men, going to conservatism. This is why you're seeing an increase of it. Let me keep pushing.
Principle I find there's examples in the book, such as what happened when Janet Reno sent tanks to go knock down the walls of citizens at the Koresh Ranch, and you had a fire in which both adults and children died. And the media said nothing about this. Okay, whatever. This incredible violation, okay, of normal, the normal humane procedure on the part of a democratic government. They said nothing. Okay, everything was suppressed because it was the new Clinton administration. So what happened? The issue went underground, got fiercer, and it erupted 2 years later in the attack on the Murrah building. Okay, by that fanatic.
This is why I say, for every action, there's an equal and an opposite reaction. You can't keep doing things like this and not expect at some point a return from an angle that you never saw coming. These are the facts. Keep stigmatizing people who are on edge. Keep stigmatizing a group of people who are downtrodden and don't have anything to lose. Being smug and ignorant to people. You're going to get a backlash. And my whole thing from the beginning was, look, y'all need to be having these conversations. You might not like the conversation itself, but you need to start having these conversations, because if you don't, what you're going to end up doing is silencing a group of people. And okay, silence them for a minute, but when they do come out in the open, it's going to come like an explosion, and you're not going to be able to handle it. So before that occurs, let's have the conversation. Nah, well, that's wrong. That's not right. Okay, all right, okay. Wait. And this shit is still occurring. This is not subsided. A lot of people think that this is going away. It ain't going away yet, but I will tell you this. If times get really rough and they get hard, the first programs at universities that will be eradicated will be women and gender studies and African American studies. I guarantee you, the first programs to go, the first departments to get cut. Then they'll cut philosophy probably after that. Then all the humanities, and they'll keep all the hard sciences and the social sciences. Let me keep pushing.
Right-wing fanatic, okay, who killed incredible numbers of people. Right? So this is what's happening now, is that gender studies is an ideology. Okay, it is not a scholarly discipline as presently constructed in the universities. Right? And why wasn't this dealt with on the left? Why was there no critique on the left? Nothing. And so it goes underground, and now it erupts in Hungary on the far right.
And look, Trump just came through with the Race and Sex Stereotyping Act. Men are like, damn, y'all going a little extra too hard. But the funny thing is, you got a whole bunch of men who have been indoctrinated into this way of thinking. And basically, Camille Paglia just called them wimps. Like, this is what women want nowadays. You want to be able to shame men into silence. That's the kind of men you want. Those are the kind of men you desire. The men who you tell, hush now, and then they just shut up. That's the kind of shit y'all want. You get what you invest in, you get what you ask for. That's just the reality of life. Let me keep pushing, man. And look, this last clip, I'm going to just let it run. And then after that, I'm going to have my little thing to say, and then I'm up out this joint. Because we already long off into it. I'm ready to be done with it, man, so I can go eat my chicken, man. So, and this ain't a dig against women. It's a dig against what women are doing in these spaces. And yeah, the world is fucked up for women in some ways. Can't deny it. But it's fucked up for men too in a whole bunch of ways. Man, I just had a partner, man, got stabbed by his wife, man. Real talk. But we ain't ready to have these real conversations and shit. We having these superficial ass conversations, and shame and guilting and neurosis is the pervading way of how we contending with the issues. That ain't gonna work in the long run. And you gonna get blowback, as the brother said in the chat. Blowback gonna come. And right now, it's been pretty much quiet. You got something called the manosphere, but wait till a horde of men start realizing and waking up and smelling the coffee. And start to say, man, fuck this shit. But anyway, I'm going to show you the last part of this. And then I'm going to have my ending commentary, and then I'm about to be back out of here. So let's finish it up. It's about 6 minutes, this last clip, though. I'm going to let it play without saying anything.
Good evening. I'm looking for my 6 minutes to be set. Okay, good. If men are obsolete, then women will soon be extinct unless we rush down that ominous, brave new world path where females will clone themselves by parthenogenesis, as famously do Komodo dragons, hammerhead sharks, and pit vipers. A peevish, grudging rancor against men has been one of the most unpalatable and unjust features of second and third wave feminism. Men's faults, failings, and foibles have been seized on and magnified into gruesome bills of indictment. Ideologue professors at our leading universities indoctrinate impressionable undergraduates with carelessly fact-free theories alleging that gender is an arbitrary, oppressive fiction with no basis in biology. Is it any wonder that so many high-achieving young women, despite all the happy talk about their academic success, find themselves in the early stages of their careers in chronic uncertainty or anxiety about their prospects for an emotionally fulfilled private life? When an educated culture routinely denigrates masculinity and manhood, then women will be perpetually stuck with boys who have no incentive to mature or to honor their commitments. And without strong men as models to either embrace or for dissident lesbians to resist, women will never attain a centered and profound sense of themselves as women. From my long observation, which predates the sexual revolution, this remains a serious problem afflicting Anglo-American society with its Puritan residue. In France, Italy, Spain, Latin America, and Brazil, in contrast, many ambitious professional women seem to have found a formula for asserting power and authority in the workplace while still projecting sexual allure and even glamour. This is the true feminine mystique, which cannot be taught, but flows from an instinctive recognition of sexual differences. In today's punitive atmosphere of sentimental propaganda about gender, the sexual imagination has understandably fled into the alternate world of online pornography, where the rude but exhilarating forces of primitive nature rollick unconstrained by religious or feminist moralism. It was always the proper mission of feminism to attack and reconstruct the ossified social practices that had led to wide-ranging discrimination against women. But surely it was and is possible for a progressive reform movement to achieve that without stereotyping, belittling, or demonizing men. History must be seen clearly and fairly. Obstructive traditions arose not from men's hatred or enslavement of women, but from the natural division of labor that had developed over thousands of years during the agrarian period and that once immensely benefited and protected women, permitting them to remain at the hearth to care for helpless infants and children. Over the past century, It was labor-saving appliances invented by men and spread by capitalism that liberated women from daily drudgery. What is troubling in too many books and articles by feminist journalists in the U.S., despite their putative leftism, is an implicit privileging of bourgeois values and culture. The particular focused clerical and managerial skills of the upper middle class elite are presented as the highest desideratum, the ultimate evolutionary point of humanity. Yes, there has been a gradual transition. I'm going to have to skip. Oh my goodness, I have to skip what I'm going to talk about to Hannah. Oh my goodness. Okay, I've got to skip. Oh Lord. Okay, all right. Okay. But Rosen's triumphalism about women's gains seems startlingly premature when she says of the sagging fortunes of today's working class couples that they and we had, quote, reached the end of 100,000 years of human history and the beginning of a new era, and there was no going back, close quote. This sweeping appeal to history somehow overlooks history's far darker lessons about the cyclic rise and fall of civilizations, which as they become more complex and interconnected, also become more vulnerable to collapse. The earth is littered with the ruins of empires that believed they were eternal. After the next inevitable apocalypse, men will be desperately needed again. Oh, sure, there will be the odd gun-toting Amazonian survivalist gal who can rustle game out of the bush and feed her flock. But most women and children will be expecting men to scrounge for food and water and defend the home turf. Indeed, men are absolutely indispensable right now, invisible as it is to most feminists, who seem blind to the infrastructure that makes their own work lives possible. It is overwhelmingly men who do the dirty, dangerous work of building roads, pouring concrete, laying bricks, tarring roofs, hanging electric wires, excavating natural gas and sewage lines, cutting and clearing trees, and bulldozing the landscape for housing developments. It is men who heft and weld the giant steel beams that frame our office buildings. It is men who do the hair-raising work of insetting and sealing the finely tempered plate glass windows of skyscrapers 30 stories tall. Every day along the Delaware River in Philadelphia, one can watch the passage of vast oil tankers and towering cargo ships arriving from all over the world. These stately colossi are loaded, steered, and offloaded by men. The modern economy, with its vast production and distribution network, is a male epic in which women have found a productive role, but women were not its author. Surely modern women are strong enough now to give credit where credit is due.
Man, I'm truly messing up today, man. I just ain't got my mind on it. So sorry about that. But so anyway, man. So here's what I want to say about it. We live in a culture today where, the people who are primarily being educated in these universities are women. And they go there and they hear all of these disparaging things about men. They hear that men are rapists, sexist, abusers. They hear that men enslaved women and that men prevented and oppressed men oppressed women from being able to fully function and thrive. And they're the primary ones obtaining education at these institutions. And it started off with a group of crazy ass white women, which is what the fuck I think they are. They're crazy as hell. Self-absorbed, self-indulgent, daddy hating, got daddy issue women who are giving all of the culture a fucking daddy issue. And every Wednesday, what I intend to do is to point out women who get it, who understand that, you know, men and women are going to always have problems. They're never going to see eye to eye 100%. But the very idea that men are evil, that men are obsolete, that we don't need men, I don't need no man, fuck men, men are trash, predicated upon shallow, narrow, non-scientific, non-substantive claims. I'm going to highlight them. Women who know, I'm going to discuss them, who know these facts and who are willing to speak about them unabashedly and in an unrestricted way. I'm going to talk about these women. That's why I say she's a woman I can work with. She's somebody I can actually sit back and chill with, have a real for real conversation with. I might not agree with everything she says, but damn it, she can definitely come on the GG show any motherfucking time she want to. I'll rock with her, man. And she's lesbian. So I don't think black men have a problem at all with people for their sexual choices or whatever the case may be. But damn, can you have respect for us too? While you're going through what you're going through, if you got a claim that's legitimate, we'll listen. But we're not going to sit there and take the bashing. We're not going to do that, man. We ain't going to do that, man. We ain't going to sit back and be passive, man. It ain't good for women. It definitely ain't good for us. So it is what it is. And it is, like this brother Christopher Clipper said, Andrea Dworkin type of feminism. Exactly. Not grounded in any historical, anthropological, or biological understanding. It's just an expression of hatred and distaste towards men. Now, surely men do some fucked up things to women. But what we don't need is a class of nuns, secular nuns, walking around snubbing their noses everywhere, talking about how fucked up men are. And then if you resist it, you get called a misogynist. You tell a black woman she's out of line, oh, that's misogynoir. And then you got black men who co-signing this shit now. Like simps. And then women know this, man. They understand it. Like men are like rushing and dashing to be mascots, to worship at the altar of Mother Goddess. We got to do better than this, man. The real men need to stand up and tell these people what it is, man. It ain't no hatred. It's just reality. So anyway, I ain't gonna talk your head off no more. But I got a whole bunch of, like, I got a playlist on my channel who basically, you know, are critical of feminism, especially radical, outrageous, misandrous feminism. It's a playlist there. It's called Women Critical of Feminism. Nobody looks at it. Nobody pays attention to it. I suggest you pay attention to it, learn it, understand it, and be able to understand how to articulate the points to other people. So if they say, Oh, you hate feminism? No, I like Camille. I like Camille Paglia's feminism. I really like hers. I just don't like yours. I just don't like yours because I think yours is a bit misandrous. But anyway, man, I've been on this thing for an hour and 30 minutes, man. It's time for me to sit back, eat some chicken, drink some apple soda, and shake on and bake. But this is not about hating women. This is about trying to deal with a situation whereby men are basically facing, especially black men, are facing from black women the talking points of second wave feminism that are ridiculous. And we know where it's coming from. We know the origins of it. It's time for it to end. And it will end one way or another. Or at least you're going to get a response to it. And you can call me whatever you want to. You can call me misogynist all day long. If that's what I got to be called, so be it. Fuck it. I'm a misogynist then. So I'm up out this thing, man. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you learned something. And I hope you found a new person that you could look at and gain some intel from. So, peace out, y'all. I'll holler at y'all next time. Later.